We've all seen the big victory parties in movies, the drinking horns, the dancing, the piles of gold. But there's another story that begins after the fires go out, one that no one talks about. It's the story of the noble women, the queens, the princesses, the daughters of chiefs whose homes have just been taken. Their fate was not just a detail, it was part of the plan. This is not a story about romance or rescue. This is about what happened when the noise stopped and the real price of losing was paid. We will look at 7 of these fates. If you care about true history like this, hit subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, write in the comments which city you were listening from. This script is based on real research, using sources like the Annals of Ulster and the Laxdela saga. Now, back to the story. Number 1. The Women of Athcliath, 821, the Irish coast. The line in the Annals of Ulster is short, written like a business record. For the year 821, it says, Etter was attacked by the heathens, and they carried off a great number of women into captivity. The place we call Howth today was a big settlement on a peninsula guarding the north entrance to Dublin Bay. It was a prize worth taking. The raid wasn't random. It was a planned grab for resources. And in the 9th century, one of the most valuable resources was people. These women, stripped of their names and families in one brutal act, were reclassified under Norse law as thralls. This was the lowest level in society, counted as property, not people. Their life of slavery began on the decks of a longship, packed tight as human cargo. The voyage itself was a test. Only the strongest survived the rough North Atlantic crossing. Their likely destination was the growing Viking port of Dyflin, later Dublin, which became one of the biggest slave markets in Western Europe. There, they would be checked, priced, and sold. A healthy young woman could be worth between 12 and 20 ounces of silver, the same as what a small farm made in a whole year. They were bought by Norse settlers in Ireland or sent further away to markets in Hedeby in Denmark, Birka in Sweden, or even pushed along the river routes of the Rus into the huge slave systems of the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate. Their weaving or healing skills, once marks of high birth, only made their price higher. The annals don't record a single name. They were just numbers in a line. Their lives and stories were erased, turned into fuel for the Viking world. Taken, listed, silenced. Number 2. Melkorka, mid-10th century, Ireland to Iceland. The Icelandic Laxdala saga, written 200 years later, actually gives one of these captives a name. Melkorka was the daughter of an Irish king, Mirkiyatan. Around the year 956, her life was shattered by a Viking raid. She was captured, shipped to Norway, and put up for sale in a crowded market. She was noticed by Höskuld Dala Kolsson, a rich Icelandic chief on a trading trip backed by King Haakon of Norway. Höskuld was taken by her beauty and dignity, asking the trader her name. The trader, a rust dealer named Gilly, said he didn't know it. Höskuld paid 3 marks of silver for her, a huge price. 1 mark was 8 ounces, so he paid 24 ounces of pure silver, 3 times the price of a top milk cow. He bought her silence too. For the whole trip back to Iceland and for years after, Melkorka refused to speak. She lived in his hall as a concubine, a thrall, and gave him a son they called Olaf. Everyone, even Höskuld, thought she was mute. This was her shield, a desperate way to keep some small piece of herself in a world where she had no power.
The truth only came out by accident. One day, Höskuld was walking by a stream near his farm and heard Melkorka talking to their little son. She was teaching him her native language, Gaelic. The saga says she told the boy that his grandfather was Mirkiyatan, king of the Irish. Höskuld asked her about it, and then her full story of royal birth was revealed. Her place in the household became a little better, but she was never freed. She stayed in Iceland, a captive princess whose identity was uncovered by chance. Her son, Olaf, grew up to be a strong leader known as Olaf the Peacock because of his rich clothes. He later sailed to Ireland with a ship full of goods, met his grandfather King Mirkiyatan, and was officially recognized as Irish royalty. But Melkorka never saw her home again. She died in Iceland, far away from the land she should have ruled. Bought, hidden, revealed. Number 3. The Abbess of Coldingham, 870, the coast of Northumbria, Scotland. In the autumn of 870, the great heathen army, which had attacked England for 5 years, marched north. The army was led by the famous sons of Ragnar Lothbrok, including Ivar the Boneless and Halfdan. They went for the monastery at Coldingham, a house of both monks and nuns built on a windy cliff over the North Sea. The abbess, known later as Ebba the Younger, knew exactly what was coming. Viking raids on holy places were known not just for stealing and killing, but for the abuse of the women inside. For Ebba and her nuns, this fate was worse than death, a shame that in their deep faith ruined the soul itself. As the Viking army came closer, Ebba gathered her sisters in the meeting hall. The story told by the 13th century writer Matthew Paris in his Florus Historiarum is very blunt. She took a razor and cut off her own nose and top lip in front of everyone, leaving her face a bloody mask. She then told the other nuns to do the same, saying, "Make yourselves too terrible for the lust of these men." One after another they followed her. When the Vikings broke through the monastery walls and stormed into the meeting hall, they did not find helpless women. They saw a quiet group of women who had destroyed their own beauty on purpose. The raiders, robbed of their prize and furious at this act, showed no pity. They blocked the doors, stacked wood against the walls, and set the whole place on fire. The abbess and her sisters burned alive. Their final choice was not life or death, but between two kinds of death. They chose fire. Their bones, mixed with ash and stone, became part of the cliffside earth, burned, buried, unbroken. If you value this kind of well-documented history, hit subscribe. It's the best way to keep this channel alive. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. This script is based on sources like the writings of Matthew Paris and archaeological finds from Viking times. Now back to the history. Number 4. The Women of Canterbury, 1011, the heart of Kent, England. For almost 3 years, a big Danish army under Thorkel the Tall had been destroying southern England. King Elfr the Unready's plan of paying more and more Danegeld had failed. It only brought more attacks. In September 1011, Thorkel's army laid siege to Canterbury, the church capital of England. For 20 days the city fought back. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle says the defense was strong, but the city was betrayed from inside by a man named Alfmar, whose life had once been saved by Archbishop Elfir. The Vikings rushed through the gates. The Chronicle gives a dark picture.
They took Archbishop Elia and Elfcafu the king's reeve, and Leofrin, abbess of St. Mildred's, and Godwin, bishop of Rochester. They captured the whole leadership of the city, both worldly and church. Then they looted the great Christ Church Cathedral and killed most of the people. But the noble women, like Abbess Leofrin and Elfjard's wife, were not killed. They were far too valuable. They became hostages, bargaining chips in hard negotiations. The army kept them for months. Archbishop Elfcafu refused to let anyone pay ransom for him, saying he would not have his freedom bought with the church's money. In April 1012, at a drunken feast in Greenwich, the angry Vikings threw animal bones at him before one of them struck him dead with an axe. He became a martyr. The fate of the women was quieter, but just as frightening. They were part of the cost of peace. The next year, a huge payment of 48,000 pounds of silver was given to Thorkel's army to make them leave. The freedom of those high-ranking women was almost certainly part of that deal. Their lives counted as items in a national bill. They were pawns in the biggest power game of their time. Their safety depended on silver and the moods of their captors. Captured, ransomed, erased. Number 5. The Captives of Dumbarton Rock, 870, the Kingdom of Strathclyde, Scotland. While Halfdan and Ivar's army burned monasteries in the east, another Viking force attacked from the west. The leaders were Olaf the White, king of Dublin, and his ally Ivar. Their target was Altclot, the Rock of the Clyde, now called Dumbarton Rock. This steep volcanic rock was the capital of Strathclyde. For 4 months the fortress held out under siege. The attackers could not climb it, so they surrounded it and cut off the water. The annals of Ulster record that after 120 days the well inside ran dry. The defenders, dying of thirst, gave up. What came next was one of the biggest slave takings of the Viking Age in Britain. Olaf and Ivar spent the winter on the Clyde, storing their loot. In 871, 200 ships sailed back to Dublin, loaded with treasure and human captives. The annals say they brought back a great haul in people, Angles, Britons, and Picts. The king of Strathclyde, Arthgal, was among them. His wife and the noble women of the court were now slaves. Arthgal was later killed in Dublin on Olaf's orders. For the women, their titles meant nothing. They were just part of a huge human cargo. Their worth measured in the Dublin slave market. Their story shows the size and planning of Viking slavery. This was not a side effect of raids. It was the main goal. Besieged, thirsted, shipped. Number 6. The Wives of the Settlers, late 9th century, Iceland. The Icelandic Landnáma book, or Book of Settlements, explains how the island was colonized. It is often told as a story of brave explorers seeking freedom. But the book also shows the harsh truth of how society was built. It was built with stolen women. The saga of Ingemund the Old, a powerful chief from Norway, is one example. Before moving to Iceland, his men, including his foster brothers, raided Ireland. The Landnáma book says clearly they came back with captives. One was an Irish noblewoman named Hrafgríður. She was taken by a Viking called Ewinder Solvason and forced to be his wife in the hard new land of Iceland. Another chief, Kettle the Foolish, is written about as settling
in Kirkúbar, but the book says that because he was a Christian, no heathens would live there. His descendants, though, married into families whose mothers were captured Irish women. DNA evidence today supports these stories. Modern studies show that while most of the male settlers in Iceland had Norse fathers, up to 63% of the first women settlers had mothers from Ireland and Scotland. The numbers are harsh. For every chief who built a farm, there were often women who had been taken by force from their homes to become unwilling wives and mothers. They became the base of a new nation, a base laid in violence, stolen, carried, replanted. Number 7. The Lady of the Osberg Ship, 834, Vestfold, Norway. In 1904, archaeologists digging in a large burial mound near the Oslofjord in Norway found the most famous Viking treasure ever discovered, the Osberg ship, kept safe in blue clay. The 21-meter oak ship was beautifully carved, its prow shaped like a curling serpent. Inside was a royal burial chamber dated by 3 rings to the summer of 834. It was packed with treasures, a decorated wooden cart, 3 ceremonial sledges, beds, chests, tapestries, and the bones of 15 horses and 4 dogs. In the chamber were the skeletons of 2 women. One was old, between 70 and 80 years. Her bones showed she had advanced cancer. She was likely a powerful woman, maybe a queen or a priestess. For years, people thought the second woman, younger, around 50, was her servant or companion who chose to follow her into death. But modern science tells a darker tale. DNA tests on the younger woman show the marker, haplogroup U7, almost never seen in Scandinavia. It is mostly found near the Black Sea and Iran. This proves she was likely a foreigner brought from far away. Her diet, studied from her bones, also changed suddenly late in life to a high-protein diet, like the Norwegian elite, showing she had not always lived there. The likely truth is chilling. She may have been a noblewoman from the east, taken in a raid, and forced to serve in a house of the powerful Osberg queen. Her life in Norway looked rich compared to a farm slave, but she was still property. When her mistress died, her life was taken too. She was sacrificed, maybe willingly, maybe not, to serve in death as she had in life. The rich grave was not for her, it was a sign of her owner's power. Her body in that tomb's not a story of loyalty, but the final act of possession. Bound, buried, forgotten. The stories do not stop there. In 2009, workers building a road for the 2012 Olympic Games in Dorset, England, found a mass grave at Ridgeway Hill. Inside was a pit with 54 young men, all executed around the year 1000. The bodies were thrown in, but 51 skulls were placed in a pile at one side. Tests on their teeth, which keep the record of where someone grew up, proved they were all from Scandinavia, one from north of the Arctic Circle. They were a Viking warband, caught and killed by the Anglo-Saxons. It was a harsh act of local resistance. But this big find of Viking men being killed is rare in the records. The writings of the time, from the Annals of Ulster to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, mostly talk not about captured Viking men, but about captured local women. For every Viking crew that died far from home, many ships sailed back full of stolen people. These women were the hidden money of the Viking Age, the real spoils of war, their fates forgotten, their names erased. Their worth counted in silver, but their loss was complete.